네, 대표로 참아드니 라기바만 보여래, 대사바만 보여래, 대체상지 참드니 가시 오 다른 정보를 이거 봐서서 여기서서들이나 나 보면은 어떻게든 좀 싸가리 사람들이 초밥해가지고 이렇게 나중에 기분 내술 마시는 애들이 됐다고 생각해. 말에 운행하는 애들이 좀 따라니 아버지처럼 주님으로 우리가 신나 은혜를 되는 거로 매일 듣고만 참 와서 수고 사회 샘도 제야고 말이야. 그냥 때는 이제 보다 때는 방어 맞이가 직관도 말이야. 공부되는 거 내려오는 망치도 망문이라고 해. 이따가 어디 가고 그러더니 나가 뭐 수원을 때니 딱 용기 가는 매나 나보다 어디 하고니 그러니까 와서 성남이 참아 맹마시냐 그러는 나무는 게 좋아. 요래 내가 참아 힘tap한 제가 요래 제가 전부 다시 내려줘야.
So first of all, Rinpoche extends his Tashidele, a very warm welcome to everybody who made the way here. Some of you might be older students, people I already met, and there might be many which I never met. People who are new to the Dharma, which we never met. Like in a different country, I'm here in a different country, people which I've never seen, maybe you've never seen me, and then sometimes the feeling can arise immediately. But it's important also if we contemplate to be skilled in two traditions. We have to be skilled in both, in the worldly tradition, how we get along in the worldly context, as well as also in the context of Dharma or in a spiritual context. And from this perspective, we also see that the body, which we cherish so much, is quite an impermanent phenomenon. We'll have to leave that behind one day. But then the essence of our being, our mind, that is what will stay. The mind will continue. And not only that, but there's the recognition that in Buddhist Dharma that all sentient beings have been our very kind parents, our very kind mother and father in essence. And so we are all very close connected, like a family. So concerning me, I might not have too many qualities, I don't know the worldly tradition so well, but what I do know is the view and the perspective from Buddhism, and I go in all different places, meet people which I haven't met before, and wherever I go, wherever I meet, I always have this instant natural feeling of like I get in a family, I become a member of a family with a deep affection and love. So with this perspective, I extend a very warm Tashide, that's a Tibetan welcome, to everybody.
잠들는 물을 못 채게 물을 못 채게 가르쳐 줘야 되나 나 시다 동호와 판처 기타시 시가 이게 내가 또 탑시 너무 막 탑시요 내가 탑시랍 된 바지 그렇지 탑을 뛰니 시랍 됐대 그 강의를 듣기 하마는 이제랑 탑 hinge 제 어디 들어오나 이 제대로 시랍 된 거요 대회는 탑과 시락도가 대금물이 탑고요. 샌들 사바된 hinge를 요거는 사바된 hinge를 되는 물이 탑고요. 물을 통해서니 노화를 좀 제받다 봐봐. 내가 접시 여기 박시들 transition 제일 나치가 공부와 물도 하지 않고 다
So we were talking about these two traditions, like the worldly tradition and then the more spiritual tradition. In the context of the Dharma, we talk about the preciousness of this human rebirth. So it's not just the human rebirth which we got, it's a precious, very precious, something which is very dear and precious. And the characteristic of a human is generally somebody who we can understand language and we can communicate. So we communicate between humans in societies, and we also try to increase happiness through whatever means, to increase states of happiness in our mind, in our society, and to give up suffering and their causes. So in this context we need two things. We need method or skillful means, and we need wisdom. And from a Buddhist perspective, this also connects to previous lives. Like if we were able to accumulate a lot of positive, wholesome actions motivated for love and loving kindness in the past, this is actually skillful means, and this will lead to wisdom, to deep inner wisdom. And both skillful means and wisdom together are actually necessary. They're like the cause for a precious human rebirth. A mind which is endowed with love and loving kindness and compassion. And so this is true for all beings in the six realms, but particularly also for humans, and our endeavor to increase happiness and states of happiness, and to decrease suffering and states of suffering. So we talked about this preciousness of this rebirth, or this precious human life, where we have in this life the motivation to increase happiness and to decrease suffering. And also, if you look around in the world, it's quite different in different countries or in different regions. Actually, even if we look back in historic context, there were countries during the First and Second World War which were incredibly involved in it, and which the suffering was just unbelievable, undescribable. And then there were other countries which are not involved. They were they were in peace, actually, in harmony. But we don't even need to look so much back historically. Even if we look what's happening right now in this world, there's places where there's so much suffering, where there's disharmony, where there's war. And right now, where there's so many new refugees coming and emerging right now while we're talking. So if we investigate, all these humans are suffering and deeply suffering. And we should understand what is actually the cause of suffering. And when we talked before, we can look at this world from two different kinds of traditions, or two different kinds of perspective. We have like the worldly tradition, so to say, and then a more spiritual tradition, or in the context of Buddhism we call it the Dharma. These two traditions are very much like our two eyes with which we perceive and see the world. In the worldly context, we have all these worldly developments which we have science, and based on science there's all these new seeings, new developments, where the world increases. And that's also very much skillful methods, skillful means, and a lot of wisdom and knowledge involved in this worldly context, also to decrease suffering. But then there's also the outer developments, like every year something new is coming out, technical, like new things, planes, or new things which are discovered and so forth. So we see in the outer context, it's blooming and increasing more and more. But if we look and make the link back to suffering, and if we really want to understand what is the cause for suffering, then this worldly tradition alone is not enough. We need some other means, and here is where a more spiritual approach comes in, and wisdom, method and wisdom which comes in from there to understand what is really the root of suffering, the deeper root of suffering, and also to acknowledge that very often, even though all humans, all beings strive towards happiness, so quite out of control we experience again and again suffering. So in order to address that, we need a spiritual approach. And in this context, we call it the Dharma, the tradition of the Dharma.
그는 예를 들어서 다음 말 아니다고 저 하고 그랬어. 다고 주시신이 대사에 그 미성보 대사에 상고요. 말이 난 미성보를 자하는 말에 용진 개봐야 말에 보통 시험보야 말에 답변이 가야 말에 주요시 다 대충 좀만 돼. 그래서 보고 싶은 하고 대신이 다 냠이 돼서 걔는 근데 강에만 못 쳐요. 강에는 잡아든 강에는 못 내려요. 로지 첫사비 때문에 좀 돼. 자 강에 자자 나오면서 마저도 강에 나요 그랬어. 목에 강에 나요 그랬어. 내 강에 나요 그랬어. 야, 제일 힘들다. 강에는 뭘 마음이 지고 강에는 제법 값이 다 대비 뒤에 있는 다 강에 가야지 정도. 상담 오 다들 강에 저기 살아야지. 얘는 다 책게 이거. 등에 많이 나대도 좀 산지 이민선 좀 이비를 로지구나 가지는 죽고 잡아야 했어. 다디는 유명한 가지를 가는 책을 했어. 대답적으로. 그 책들을 뛰는 다 그 가리를 송가하더라. 뭐 다디는 유명한 저거도 다디는 그냥 나다고 라마 차려서 그리 때리지 않는 거죠. 때론 나중에 때 차도 유명하고 다 되게 내를 때리잖아. 그 뒤에 제가 그랬더니 다 가버리는 거 동네 나가 프로테이크를 막하는 동네 오 진짜 대학원 야 나서서 저태를 했어. 딱 당근들 안 주도 동네들 안 세는도 없고 이 학원 때문에 빈손 그좀 당하는 거는 애들한테는 빈손 얘들은 나를 강에라를 타게 터프들이 강에를 때리 약속 소문지 강에들이 다 핀데도 없었는데 강에들 장고치에서 강에서 가지고 차요래 근데 얘들이 보고 탐지게 장소 강에는 직다 이런 말이 나 강에는 대가리를 피바들 전 강에 염용만 보고래 얘들이 전 기다려서 그렇게 강요해
So if I look at myself, Rinpoche says, for me in my life, the Dharma, or this more spiritual tradition, helped me greatly. It was of great benefit of me. Some people who know me, or some other who don't know me, they might think, oh, I'm a great person, I'm famous, or all this kind of stuff. That's actually not true at all. I'm not even that good a person. I don't have lots of qualities, I don't have studied a lot. But something which really benefited me in this life, and Rinpoche points to the booklet in front of him, it's a practice of the 37 conduct of the Bodhisattvas. So this really benefited in my life. I was lucky to came across this when I was a small boy, and then through the turmoil in this world, I experienced a lot of suffering myself. The Chinese invaded, later I was in prison for 20 years, I made these experiences, I made experiences of famine when there was no food and great hunger and all kinds of other sufferings. So what really was very dear to me and was a great support and helped me were these 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas. And what actually did help, if we would boil it or quintessentialize it, bring it all together, what is in there, it's a single message actually which says that all the Buddhas derived from an altruistic mind, a mind which is single-pointedly directed towards the benefits of others. And the opposite of that is that all the suffering which comes from circling around a self and grasping to a self and the disturbing emotions, the mental poisons which arise from that. So if we understand that in the perspective of suffering, so that's this knowledge that the suffering, the root of all the suffering, is this holding, this cherishing, and grasping to a self, with the notion of me in contrast to somebody else. And based on that, it stirs up our mind, and all these so-called disturbing emotions rise in our mind, like attachment, like hatred, jealousy, and so forth. And based on that, with body, speech, and mind, we get into action, and we accumulate a lot of activities, what we also call karma, then, cause and effect. So this lies very much at the root of all. So if we look, when we talked before about the suffering, it's important to understand the cause of suffering, the actual root, the cause of suffering. And we see that it boils down to our mind, actually. It starts with our mind. And that's also where the medicine or the Dharma actually really helps, where the Dharma comes in to really overcome suffering and overcome the root of suffering. So this for me was of great benefit, actually. That's what helped me in my life greatly. And it's based on my own experience. And when people ask me for advice, that's mainly what I can share.
강의들 새로 탑 강의들이요. 오, 다다 강의들 독지 강의들 다다랑 내가 탑 제일 힘들어. 다들 강의 요가 이제 담이 제가 탑. 시고서. 오, 저런 마음과 강의 좀 혹시 하 고네. 이 강의들 저들 하 고도. 이 강의들은 되게 좀 되더라 하 고래. 단 논의들이 사실 까상게 딱 주고 거 제대로 원해요. 잠들린 게 기록한게 책 가까이 막 동문회들이자 저거를 쫓아서 버리지. 그런데 내가 그 저tam 동이 격대하고 또 다다 다다 동이 최고의 용어야. 동이 최고의 강나 이 제고로 상모당나 오 저대게나 나라 동이 저대게지. 그래서 다 잡으려는 투과하면 이 저거를 상모당나 봐서 저 세상에 내가 차도를 세상에 차도니 강의 속에 다 나리 성지 나 진짜 가벼야 고도 차고지 고도를 강도 받다 거지 다 데리지는들이 나는 갖고 저기 캐디 기는 너 받았나 그 예저 철로 받다고 이러더니 또 나팔이 아마는 다 돌아가는 거는 마음 갖고 되는 데리지는들이 란 대외 체질이는 또 봤다고 그러지. 파도 봤다고 천도 봤다고 그러지. 대외 다 들이. 다 내가 lokal 내가 차로 쭉 되게 차야. 저기 세상의 차도를送的, 세상의 차도를 감해서인데 다 통화 다진이送的. 오, 너무 말도 다된도 이렇게. 다진의 뒤에 세상의 차도를 뒤에 사자도 잡으려는 동네들 조자지.
So, and then if we have the motivation to be free of suffering, which I guess everybody has, we want to be free of suffering, but the suffering we experience right now, the causes for this suffering, they already lie back in the past. And it's hard to change sometimes the suffering we experience right now. And the method to eradicate suffering right now is sometimes quite difficult. And sometimes there's nothing else than just accepting the suffering right at the moment. But from the perspective which was just offered, where we can really address is the suffering of the future. So in other words, what will happen to us in future? And if we saw before the causes, then we see which causes we actually have to avoid, or in other words, what kind of mental state we have to generate in our mind, which will lead and bring happy states of being for the future. So if this also comes in an understanding of the law of cause and effect, and that's also the essence, we could say, very much of all the 84,000 different teachings, something that's called like the Buddha gave, that's a terminology. But if we look very practically, even if we look in the suffering of the world these days, it's important to understand what are the causes for this. And the causes, which causes bring happy states of mind, which causes bring suffering. And if we look at suffering, be it very big suffering, or even minute or smaller suffering, we have to understand the causes. If we look in the world these days, where there's so much quarreling and war, the cause of all this suffering is actually a hatred. And based on that, emotions of jealousy and other disturbing emotions. But as was offered before, if we look actually deeper below that, is a grasping to a self, attachment to a self, a notion of, oh, here's me versus the opposite, the others. And here is our group and our society. Here's our country. We want to increase for the costs or the cost of others. And that's where the problem starts, in small societies, and then it becomes bigger on a scale, and to the limit where it turns out into war. We want to increase, and we think this is right. It's us. It's about us, but grasping to a self. And then eventually we will harm others. We will harm others, and ultimately, from a higher perspective, both will lose, actually. Ultimately, there will be suffering for all which are involved. So here it's important to see that at the beginning lies a grasping, an attachment to oneself. Based on that, disturbing emotions arise, like hatred, jealousy, and so forth. This is the cause of all the suffering which we observe in the world. So, if I look at myself, I'm a person who only knows one of these two traditions, even though I say it's important for both. I don't know a lot about the worldly tradition. I'm old, so I don't even know really how to use this modern electronics like phones and other stuff. But what I do know and what I did take to heart is on a spiritual level, the law of cause and effect. To really understand this ineffable law of cause and effect, and to understand it on the level of the mind. And what it brought me, it brought a lot of happiness and joy in my own life, and especially it brought me the experience that wherever I go, I just meet friends which I know, friends which I haven't met yet. This warm feeling actually, which I feel whenever I meet people. And on a more personal level also, it really helped me to overcome suffering, to really cut suffering at the roots. And based on that, to experience joy and peace wherever I go and with whomever I meet. So this comes from working with one's own mind. So working with my own mind or develop a good heart, a good-heartedness. And so we have to understand that we have to start with our own mind. Whatever experience it is, be it experiences of suffering we experience, different levels of suffering, difficult states, challenging moments, situation, or also whether we experience happy states or more harmonious or peaceful states, which is our goal. We have to work with our mind and gain control over our mind. So we need to know what is the causes of both, actually. Which causes lead to suffering, which causes lead to more happy states of mind. And we have to gain some independence or control over this, which will then also, in the long perspective, this was actually the cause for gaining a precious human rebirth, and will also be the cause for another precious human rebirth. So we have to understand this. And it says in a famous quote, it says, if we want to understand the karma of the past, we have to look at the present situation, at the life right now. That's the fruition of the past. And if we want to look at the future, then we have to look at the conduct, our behavior right at the moment. So also if we look out in the world again and see all these difficult situations of quarreling, disharmony and war, this is the ripening result, ripening from seeds, from causes of disturbing emotions like hatred, jealousy, adversity and so forth. And based on the law of cause and effect of ripening, this which is called a ripen directly, it can also be a birth in the lower realms, or it can be the results which are in harmony with the causes. In either way, it's ripening in the present moment. So therefore it's important to work with one's own mind, with disturbing emotions in one's mind, especially like with adversity, hatred, jealousy and so forth, in order to be able to gain control, to gain some certain independence while working with our own mind.
가지고 내려가는 게 성분이 없었다. 성분은 주려고는 이와는 기와 세람들 지나고 주대와 도구로 했어. 이거로 삼는 거 땅 대지는 문이 전에 되게서 진짜 지켜고 있는. 이제 가냐면 어떤 생산 못해 지는 그 상태. 랑기 양산하다 삼먹다는 그 상태에 비인도가 따버리 마디. 그 상태 상속 생존을 못해 돼요. 근데 인간만 상태에서 상태를 못해 따버리 이제 너무 되었죠. 또 대다오더라는 고아 잘하지.
So if we look a little bit deeper in the spiritual tradition or the Dharma, we recognize it's about the mind. No matter whether we want to avoid suffering or to create states of happiness, we have to work with our own mind. And what is the cause of happiness, of all kind of happiness? In the root, actually, it's an altruistic mind, and more precisely, it's a mind which is endowed with love and loving kindness. And the suffering, or the root of suffering, which we already recognized, is our disturbing emotions, like aversity, anger, hatred, and so forth. And the root of it is grasping to a self, to an identity. So we want to be free of the causes which bring suffering. Not only the suffering itself, but we should be free of the causes of suffering. And the same is true also with happy states of mind. Not only wishing for happy states of mind, but actively plant the seeds and the causes for active states of mind. So it's good, as I said before, to know both traditions, to be skilled in both traditions, as I call it, the so-called worldly tradition, to be skilled in that, but then also be skilled in the worldly, in the spiritual tradition. As I mentioned before, I'm not very skilled in the worldly tradition. I'm old. I need help wherever I go. I can't even find the toilet sometimes, and I need assistance. So it's good to be also independent on the worldly tradition. So that's like our two eyes. We need both. The worldly, be skilled in a worldly sense, but then also in a spiritual sense. And in a spiritual sense, at least what I took to heart is to understand on a deeper level the law of cause and effect, the infallible law of cause and effect. And in a practical level, the generation of love and loving kindness in the mind, which is a method which actually leads to wisdom. It leads also an altruistic mind, a mind which is directed towards the welfare of others, leads also in a worldly sense to states of more harmony, states of peace, states of just where people are in harmony and peace with each other. And we see that there is countries which are sometimes quite naturally they have this collective harmonious field, or where it's more peaceful, in other words. And then there's countries which we know where there's tremendous suffering, where there's a lot of suffering, a lot of difficult states. But if we want to change on that level, like even on a global level, let's say in a community, but countries, but even further, we have to start with ourselves. First, the first point where we start is our own mind, to generate a loving heart, as we would say, or a pure or a serene mind, endowed with a loving heart, and this will benefit everybody around, near and far. So to purify this mind and to generate a loving heart, loving kindness in one's heart, this will be the cause for temporary happiness, but also will be the cause for the ultimate happiness on the longer run. So in this sense, it's very much, we could say, the essence of the spiritual path or tradition, or the Dharma in this sense, to work with one's own mind, to purify one's own mind, to generate a good heart. As it says in the famous quote by the Buddha himself, it says, my Dharma is to, one last line of a famous four-liner, is to completely tame this mind of mine. So that's the essence of the Dharma, to completely tame our own mind, in a sense of to generate this altruistic motivation. And this will bring peace and happiness for me and for the surroundings, not just now, for now and further lives and for the future. So that's the essence, to work with one's mind, to purify one's mind, to generate love, and loving kindness in one's mind. And that's what I did mainly my whole life, where I gained some trust, some certainty in this law of altruistic mind of love and loving kindness as a cause for happiness.
데려다니다 럭이 강이 맞을 때면서 샌데오네 내가 뭐를 직장 요한 말이 내가 뭐를 내를 저기 가고 또 상태에 럭이가 되니 상태에 상태이 랑이 되는 상태에 좋으라고 그래서 그래서 제가 좋아하는 상태에 죽어서 그러나 며칠 보고 직장을 봐도 상태에 찾아 주면서 보자 그러더라. 치, 조고 조모 파마 직장을 갖다지 치 심에다 보여줘라. 치다 심이나 되게 가래. 치다 심이는 파 상태이구나. 저 상태이 어디 상태인 줄 알았더니 서바데서 주고 되게 좋게 대치는 거라. 이 상태 직장면에 되게 샘들 자공하고 차로 나디 주고 말을 좁고 직장 매서 다들 서야만 오면은 펜션 상태인 줄 알았는데 그때 좀 되게 세대가 조금 말이 되는 남 상태로나 요가치고 매는 앞에 지금 보다 조발을 보여 남은 더 보는 이서 같이 보여래 그래서 상태들랑 비트 조고 잡아야 차대요래 그래서 상태도 보자고 탑들이 다 답을 주고 있는데 나서 나와서 시나 마치와 지가 탑 지와 마냐가 탑 공을 배가 탑 대들이 탑만 보는 시에요래 这些话得到准许嘛，等你们也得到了的，上次学过查个准嘛是样得了，大人上这系统上这这个专业作为正常老百姓行业处理作为，只有这个行业忙活作为作为，这上去处理中嘛的，当地的中的，到那里上这地方我哈过，上这个南京，上这些人说另外一把哈过，上这个没了这些现在。 같이 랑시작이요. 랑시장은 보고 직장 매칭하리 되지는 또 예우들이 밤매세 랑시작 대사 보상게 진짜 자동으로 차로 그러지 상태에 중을 상태에 시험에와 차로요. 시험이 소들이나 되면 물론 뭐지 무슨 민사요. 민주주의 사야만 민주주의요. 어서 랑시작이 가래. 지역에 랑시작을 말이에요. 또 로컬 아시자고 말 아시자야 중간에 다 생중에서 생각을 다 비슷한 제 보면은 좀 생기 자동으로 저라 장거리 대회는 인가 치고 상대는 인가 치고 사실
So it's important to know these two traditions, to be skilled. And if we want to generate happy states of our mind, in our mind, we need to know, as we said before, what is the cause, and we identify the cause as an altruistic mind. In essence, it's an altruistic mind, a mind which is endowed with love and loving kindness. And this will help us in both, in a worldly sense, in a worldly tradition, in our worldly life, but also will greatly benefit us in a spiritual context. If we look, for example, there's sometimes people who are completely alone, who don't have family members, who don't have kids, who don't have close friends, human friends, then maybe they have a pet, like a dog or a cat. And even if we see on that level, if we take that serious, if we bring them towards them some altruistic mind of love and loving kindness, it actually comes back, it feeds back, and there's a very deep relationship which can be there between humans, sometimes elder people, and a pet like a dog or a cat. On the other hand, if we don't have that, if we don't have friends, acquaintance, family, and if we can't bring any kind of relationship where we can practice and bring forth love and loving kindness, our mind becomes very hard. It coagulates almost, becomes like ice, like water turning into ice, and then we're really alone, and then there is tremendous suffering, and we really suffer from, how many people suffer from and are destitute from just being alone, separated, feeling alone, and no matter how much money you have and other assets, it won't alleviate this suffering. There's so much suffering. So we see through bringing forth of love and loving kindness and this altruistic method that this brings for the communication of peace and happiness between people. So that's the skillful means actually, which brings forth this quality. It becomes our best friend almost, so we say, with this mental attitude of love and loving kindness. And so what is the method actually to really cultivate that, to practice that and integrate that in our life? That's a spiritual tradition. Let's say the Dharma, for example, in this context. And then we need to have methods to first generate this quality of love and loving kindness, this altruistic mind, and then be able to protect it and to guard it so it doesn't decline and much like increase further and further. So that's the practice, the methodology behind it. We need to practice it. Otherwise, as we saw before, life can become sometimes very difficult. For some people, life becomes very difficult. They feel isolated, they have nobody. Their mind gets harder and harder, and these qualities of altruism, love and loving kindness, they are not there, and they suffer tremendously. It can get so far that people commit suicide. People think they can't bear this suffering anymore, this level of separation or being separated. This is also a sign of lacking wisdom, actually. We don't have this wisdom to apply really the method how to generate a heart of love and loving kindness, and which is also the root actually then for this precious human rebirth ultimately, as we saw before. And then sometimes it can end in this tragedy like a suicide, for example, which is actually, as I'm informed, very much just a phenomenon of humans. We almost don't find it in the animal realm. It's among humans. And why is it? Because it's based on our mind. And the mind commits suicide, I mean obviously the body, but the root is in the mind. If a mind is completely deprived from altruism, from love and loving kindness, and the bond and bondage which is created for this with others, our mind becomes so isolated, so much like ice, that we might be so desperate and commit suicide.
이걸 써먹다나 다다 대화 가리죠. 밑으로 메칼 나라 가시는데 그래서 사야만 보여요. 되게서 로다죠. 민간이야. 자카르레 같이 이는 핀다. 내가 세계에서 보여요. 매 가시는 랑 칼라사야요 말이. 그런 사 그다음에 동보자 랑가니 탈라놓고 틴데요. 밑에 가리스. 이 가리스. 오, 다티 끼어 하나 삼지에 되네. 삼지에 다 조고로나 세고로 삼지에 되네. 이마탄 거요. 이마탄나. 야, 그만 그 마타야. 대다티 로고 그거 때릴 때가 이런 거요. 삼지에 되는 조각한 거요. 삼지에 되는 조각은 다다 동반지고 막하시 동반지고 야. 막하시 되는 머리는 동반 조각 가요. 막 비디오 아니 상태는 주가인 거예요. 주가는 동지고 보상고 체력고 이거예요. 상태는 이는 똑같은 거요. 말아서 다 인 보고 저 이는 보고 해서 상관없나. 때릴 때는 딱 물론 뭐죠 덮고요. 그래서 다다다 그러나 이 제반은 연방을 기가 마마를 배워버리지. 그래서 다 같이 샤사야만 거요. 진짜 다다는 때는 이나 페이다 그요. 기가 제라네. 이제 상태도 산이 쉬어가는 산이 초도 좀 상태에서 강리 배사 사용 몰라도 이제 샘나 보이나 오다나 시선 작가도 너무 참아야 고차고 그런 생기는 거고요. 이년도 손나 그리 다다형들 조건도 들어오는 거다 지로에 처음에는 되나 남한테 보이들 용기 록다 봐 지난해 봐 보시랍기 방아집과는 보이들 용기 록으로 가가지 야만 상태 유치하고는 보장되나 약속만한테 영대하도록 같이 야만한 상태미 되니 제일 싫어하는 이 용기 한다는 거죠. 하다는 것도 개념이 같아 다시 차들이 주어지는 다음에 상태들 생명도 좋다 되면 상태에서 좋다니 초대죠 봐 상태를 내가 다다 내와다 내가 줘야지. 오 다다지 가면 뭐 제발할게. 저들이 제발 좋았으면 내려들이 무서. 저들이 좀 오다 상태도 다 보지 않아도 가다는 내가 기와 ସମয় 내가 줘. 그래서 제가 하고 싶어.
So we see how important it is, this attitude of altruism, this mind which is endowed with love and loving kindness, which is, then we have the motivation, not only may we be happy, but may we also be endowed with the causes which bring happiness. Exactly this attitude of love and loving kindness. So not just a temporary perspective, but a much wider scope and perspective. May also cultivate the cause which will bring happiness and peace in my mind. We see this if we look at different humans. Some are very rich, but obviously just wealth is not a cause for happiness, as we see. But then there's also people who have both, who are actually who are quite abundant or are rich and do like amazing things in the world. They benefit their society, they build hospitals and so forth. So we see being rich is not a cause for being a bad person. It all depends on the mind. And then there's other people, as we know, who have nothing, who are struggling to eat, who are struggling what they're going to eat tomorrow. But if we look, both are humans, right? And if we take two or many different examples, they're all humans. So what really unifies is this quality of humankind. But it's really, it boils all down in the mind, where we are able to work with our mind towards the direction of good-heartedness, a mind which is endowed with love and loving kindness. If we have love and loving kindness in our mind, then naturally what derives from this is a quality of generosity. We have this natural wealth that we want to share our wealth in a generous way with others. And also based on love and loving kindness, we are able to endure more difficult states. We have more patience in our mind. And it says also that love and loving kindness is the base for everything. It's actually ultimately also the cause for abundance. It's also the cause for, it says even for a shiny, radiant body who can live long. And so these are important things to consider. And if we have love and loving kindness and altruistic mind, we naturally sustain from harming others. We naturally are not inclined into harming others. And as we saw before, it's truly a cause actually for this precious human rebirth, to make this rebirth precious right now, but also for all in the future. So this is based upon an understanding of cause and effect, infallibility of the law of cause and effect, the causes which we were contributing in the past, the situation which we're in right now, and particularly our actions to what stage they will lead in future. So from a right perspective, we see that an altruistic mindset, love and loving kindness, is actually the best friend of our mind. Much a more dear friend and a reliable friend than just having millions. And but then even if we have this mind, and we might be, for example, have some amount of wealth or whatever, then out of this good-heartedness we even want to share, even at the time of the death, when we meet actually the moment of the death. Even then, love and loving kindness is a friend, and even the wealth we might share, may it be for the benefit of my family or extended family or society or community and so forth. The body will leave behind. The body is just like an old cloth, an old dressing which we'll leave behind. That which will continue is the mind. And according to the Buddhist perspective, will continue into a new life. And even if we look situation of newborn children or little children, we see sometimes little children where their mind is actually quite, they already carried through a very deep loving kindness. They're like happy, they're open, their mind feels free. And that definitely has also connection to seeds which were planted with love and loving kindness. And also the wisdom which derives from it. Not knowledge, but a deeper level of wisdom. Where sometimes we see already newborns, little children, which are just struggling from the beginning, where there's like this fear, this tight anxiety or nervousness, and where there is not a quality of this loving kindness in their heart. So to summarize, if we look at happy states and how to get to happy states, it's important that we have to plant the seed right now. And the cause for this is love and loving kindness, and that this becomes the best friend in our life. The best friend not only now, but also in the moment of the death, and it will continue from now through future lives.
얘들은 하시는 다 삼대 요 말에 들이 보고 총기를 파마는 데와야 보면와 자들이 삼대 하고 요 말에 삼대 매일 앞에요. 나 도포직장 매일 나오는 것도 뭐지 막고 그랬잖아. 뒤에는 다다 상모다 삼대에서 조고 생겨 상모당 조로 가르려 그러다가 문제가 동네용원이 저 상모당나 그러다 뭐를 붙여는 거래. 양지 집어당은 집어당을 벗어서 난 개복에 되는 게자 가래시는 선 초하게 내가 그거래. 대위 상모당 삼대들한테 빈빈과 빈소와 들이 다 당부만 늘리니 뭐를 좀 이 도로 같이 망고 이 늘리지 설때에서 우리가 아마 때 파만이 때요 그래서 파마를 때와 파마를 좀 들어와 장동 니는 망고도 고가 담아서 가는다 보자 왜 파마까지 지고래서 우리도 파는 때요리 좀 드링킹바 이는 파마지 드링킹나 오 다들 파마진 통을 때지 다 인지해 그렇게 가진 키워서는 이렇게 핀도로 핀도도 그러고요. 저를 인지해 되게 내사로 맞다 쓰는 사람 거예요. 다 파마를 좀 봤동아 내는 누가 파마 그래서 파마들라 줘봐 리용 거예요. 되게 같이 파마 매 파마 시소래요. 또 상태 가서 보면 파마가 팬이요. 저랑은 또랑은 팬이요. 상태에 싸움도 저 파마를 가진 친구를 이렇게 파마는 은혜지 왔지라 파마 맞이가 직접 요 말이다. 기와 장매 발랑데 사야 동서만 발랑을 로아도 기와 발랑을 뭐 미타기 파마 맞이가 요 말이다. 이 지리들이 속 차차지 파마 맞이가 배만 직접 하고 인지 치고지 인지 치고 같이 그 세대들이 처음 좋아하는 쇼를 좋아해 좋아해 팬이요. 인구도 바꿔서 장난 싫어 좀 차는 이게 제가 또 난지지 쇼요 난지 통야요 말이야 대회에서 파마라는 게 뭐 대회니 다 파마게 멀지네요 얘기기 용기 말하면 다양 다르게 되는 게 파마라 보지 장종 되니 라시게야 하고 내가 되니 차고요 얘기 답을 지는 다양 지도 얘기 tổng 같은 기고리 비기 참아서 제와지 손수 세드 때 다시 뭐 차는 거요. 세드 자체 뭐 같이 차는 데 시합 용고요. 데려지는 데는 용기 공부 용바 들이 데 용거래. 비기 참아서 제와 공데 음식들이 상못한데 상못한데 약합가와 손으로 약합도 같은 기고리 좀 놈들 남가지는 손한테 약하면 되라고 소통요 말이지. 약합도 수분 좋나 약합도 가진 친구를 위해서 내가 보면 약하면 실제로 파마를 세워서 맞지는 약합다. 약합을 세우면 진짜요 말이에요. 딱 가라면 와서 제가 약합을 가라때 가봐때 가리도 소체도 배상지. 아 조서 와서 약하면 되는 소리 동동을 똑똑 말이에요. 약합도 하자 짜치고리 집에서 뭐도 약합도 좀 생치고 차로요. 그래도 시라고 해놓고요. 그래서 손써가지고 차고요. 제와들이 또 파마 드니 개개 드니 약합도 해고 연지는 싸웠다면 드니 제와게 제요래.
So it's important that we practice this quality of love and loving kindness in our mind. And as we see, sometimes we already see children who are in a difficult situation where they don't meet an environment where there's love and loving kindness. Maybe they already themselves have a difficult state of mind. But even there, also later when we suffer a lot, it's important sometimes to accept it, that this is really ripening of past accumulation. That has something to do with us actually, and what we have to do is actually to turn the situation from now, even if there are difficult situations, to create. We even see beings how they are able to deal with suffering. Some are able to take it very serious and they cry and they suffer a lot, and some others have an approach where they see it more lighthearted, sometimes with laughter, and can even take it with some humor. So we need to find a way how we can train this quality of altruism, love and loving kindness, and find an object where we can value this kindness which we were given, and then also ultimately to return, to give it back. And in the context of the Buddhist mind training, we look at this precious human rebirth, this body which we have, this precious body. And if we ask, well, where is it coming from? And obviously we know it comes from our kind parents, well, parents both, and particularly from the mother, who was pregnant with us, and who took all these difficulties which he endured during the pregnancy, during the birth, and then all these stages of rising us. And even if we have difficult situations, maybe with the world or with parents, it's good to contemplate about this and to see that without my mother, even though the relationship might be difficult, without her I would not have this precious opportunity to be here. She was carrying me in her womb, she cared then, and the life force which kind of was positive was always stronger. That's why I'm here. And was giving birth and feeding me and all this stuff. And if we contemplate this deeply, not just intellectually, really deeply, we come to a point where we bring some gratitude in our heart. And maybe then, if our parents still alive, maybe we see that they are sometimes now in a situation where they suffer themselves, where they have difficulties. So the next would be, after recognizing the kindness, to actively benefit. How I can benefit now? How can I repay the kindness which I was given? How I can give it back and be a little more kind, warm, open-hearted, compassionate. And this in itself, all these acts, they create strong formations in our mind. They in fact create what we call karma, like new causes which will lead to new results. And we have here the chance to accumulate a lot of merit through being kind, good-hearted, compassionate, generous, for enduring patience, and so forth. But even if our parents would not be alive anymore, we can do the same. We can still remember the kindness which we were given, which the time we were not aware about it, and contemplate it and feel this gratitude, gratefulness and gratitude. And it will benefit both us and also others. In fact, if we even expand now the scope, which we heard already in the beginning of the talk, all countless sentient beings, according to the Buddhist approach, have been nothing else than our kind parents. Through countless circles of lives, through millions of lives, all sentient beings, we have a link for them. And we were one for a time, they were my own parents. And to see that with that motivation, we are able to slowly embrace more and more people with love and loving kindness. On the other hand, if we see each other only separate, secluded, then our mind becomes quite rigid and solid. But through this love and loving kindness, this rigid mind can melt, just like ice is melting. Through the practice based on others. We need others. First, as we said, we started with our parents, particularly with the mother, even if the relationship was difficult, but to bring forth this feeling of love, loving kindness, altruism, and just for the fact maybe that we are here, that we have this precious existence called this precious human rebirth. As next we extend this kindness to all our teachers, our mentors and teachers, also in the worldly sense, even school teachers who spend their energy, who spend their time. It could be also other situation that people would not have taken care of us at all, or people that we would have ended in a bad environment, that there are people who cared in some ways. Even the whole academic training, maybe for people who have done that, it's somehow motivated with a mind which is to benefit others and to recognize that, their kindness and the wisdom which also lies in this. And to extend it then to all teachers and ultimately mentors, people who helped us, and ultimately to everything, even like the society, even the country. It's not just naturally given that we can ride on a road or walk on a path. Somebody made it. Somebody made it with some intention to benefit beings. And also feel this, actually, that all these facilities which we have, that we feel actually grateful for being able to use them. And so this mind can expand more and more and more ultimately towards all sentient beings. And particularly, as we said, Rinpoche summarizes again, starting from the mother, and then who gave us food, who gave us shelter, protected us, all the way to a country where we live in, and the facilities which we are able to use. And to see actually that this is something very precious, which actually makes the mind happy and which will prevail and promote peace. So we need to be able to, this quality, this precious quality of love and loving kindness, to generate it, but then we need to be able to guard it, to protect it, so that it doesn't decline, but in fact even increases further and further. So to contemplate again and again, apply this mind training of love and loving kindness till we have this strong feeling in us, till it gives a strong feeling in us. And for example, also the person which, for example, before we just described different scenarios, how we can practice love and loving kindness with friends, with our own mother and so forth, till we feel this deep feeling of gratitude, thankfulness and appreciation. And so this is actually what will stay. Even, for example, also in relationships, for example, in couple relationships, if we separate, sometimes relationships go to an end naturally, but even the qualities of love and loving kindness, we can still keep it. Even though the relationship separates, but we can still train our mind and we can keep this altruistic mind, even that we think friendly and have a good heart for a person. And this will help us greatly. But in general, it's important that we, the method also to protect it from declining or decreasing is that we have to be able to practice diligence. Diligence, but even more importantly, patience. That we have to be patient in situations where it sometimes becomes difficult. Even if we look again at a couple relationship, some people, they stay together for years and years. And then sometimes it's just through a short moment of anger, of the fire of anger, it can come so far that we think, I have to separate, it doesn't work anymore. If we can there bring a quality, how to protect this love and loving kindness through patience, we can protect it. As it says sometimes that one moment of anger and aversion can destroy a whole accumulation of countless eons of positivity. So it's important to protect, to guard our mind against anger or aversion, which is really like the opposite of love and loving kindness. So for that context, we have to practice patience in order to endure patience. And even again, if a relationship comes to an end, that we can recognize, kind of our time is over as a couple, for example, but still there's no need to give up this love and loving kindness in one's heart. And so this is, if we know how to practice this and to integrate this in our life, we recognize that this is truly a friend in our life, love and loving kindness. It brought us a lot of wealth, outer and inner wealth. It brought us even this precious human rebirth. Even when we die, it will be a reliable friend, love and loving kindness, which in our mind, and it will be even like a cause for a future rebirth as a precious human rebirth. So henceforth, it is important to practice this in this life, love and loving kindness, to integrate it in our mind. if we don't do that, we can see in extreme, if we go to the extreme of the scope, even though we are humans, we can become like animals in the negative sense of animal qualities, really like the worst. In other words, it can bring out the worst of us. And even if we look at animals, they also have like a mind, but the mind is in essence the same, like from all beings. They don't want to suffer somehow, but they are striving for happiness, but their form might be quite different. For example, if we look at animals, for example, like snakes or scorpions or something, or we think their only intent is to kind of harm, and nobody likes them, or like spiders and so forth. I mean, maybe some people like it, but generally people have an aversion towards them. But it's really just like a manifestation, actually, of disturbing emotion. It's very much like a symbolic manifestation of aversion and hatred, of kind of can't help than harming others. And it's also like an absence of wisdom, of inner knowledge and wisdom, how to really understand cause and effect. Even if we look in the world, in the outer world, in a collective sense, we see that we have the outer accumulation of deeds and activities, behavior, conduct, and if it's motivated solely through aversion and what is in there for me and hatred, jealousy and so forth, it really generates so much disharmony, quarrel, and ultimately war. On the other hand, if humans individually and collectively are motivated for an open mind which is endowed with generosity, with some ethical conduct, with patience and so forth, then we see that it brings happiness to people, to societies. That's more on a collective level, but then even there, if we look that we have countries which are pretty peaceful and happy, but even there we have individuals who are also happy and others which are suffering quite a bit. So we see that's where it comes in then on a personal level and one's own accumulation of activities. So no matter whether we think we are a spiritual person or not a spiritual person, Buddhist or not Buddhist, whether we accept some law of cause and effect or karma or don't accept it, if we look very closely in the world, we see there's an interplay, there's a relation, there's a truth actually in it, no matter what standpoint we take. And it would be good and skillful to identify the causes for suffering and to be able to eradicate the causes of suffering, to identify the causes for happiness and to practice them, which we just saw before. For example, if we take in a worldly context, sometimes there might be business people who borrow $1 million, let's say $1 million from somebody else, a real great sum, and the person is completely spending it or wasting it and is not able to give it back. And it can create so much anger in the person who lended the money. He might try everything to get that money back, to get angry, to sue him, to bring all kind of methods together. But in the end, maybe then he loses all the rest of the money he has and he's still not able to get the money back. Sometimes it's smarter to just kind of to look at a deeper situation and maybe to understand also from a level of cause and effect. Maybe there's a relationship where I had that actually, or maybe I was actually harming other people in a similar way before or in past lives and so forth. Maybe it's not quite logical, but still if we can give in and accept situations, it makes sometimes situations much easier. If I would look at Tibetans, Rinpoche says that we have two qualities I could see actually among Tibetans, which I would stress here, is that no matter what goodness they experience, Tibetans or the majority of Tibetans, they always think it's the kindness of the three jewels. The kindness of the three jewels of Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, or it's whatever, if I'm good, if I'm happy in a good situation, it's based on love and loving kindness. They really believe that. Even though it might be counterintuitive, they have a very deep belief in it. And if they suffer and face a difficult situation, then they think, well, it's my karma, it's cause and effect. I caused it, I have a relation to that. And through this, I'll be able to bear it and to be patient and to be accepted and don't fight it so much, the situation. So if I believe these are two qualities which are quite effective in the world on an individual level. And above all, to practice this level of these qualities of love and loving kindness, to recognize it as a cause of happiness, to integrate it in one's practice, in one's being, to generate a good heart, which will then promote more happiness around ourselves.
소소요 인가야면은 가사가 깨땀들이 로마만 볼래가 참자들이 타용으로 연구를 이 영어들이 다 얘들이 계좌듯이 내가 라송아 이 가시에 그 계좌를 세는 되게 가시 되게 말이 내가 하자 니바치 보여래 레주게 상마가나 저절 피마다 마저나 니바치 보여래 내가 돌아가와 그래 이 대회만 로마들 돌아 인증지 소소로 대들 빈성 This Lombardi German Tuesday, the Zoroti, the Zoroti. They do the Yatana, they don't dumble, you can not what I take. Don't dinner, Madrid, to your Mary. Tawa dinner, the country cutting dinners from Gloria. That are not people that are true to your Mary. They went at the air at the dead dart of Tartamori, so long, the place of Sohana, the Matokana machine. 대회자다 주로 동원한테 인데가 들어왔을 때 나한테만 줘요래 이제 나한테 아니면 나한테 저는 로마한테 줘야지 진짜다 내가 가서는데 그 돌이 저쪽 좀 마음 거는데 소소로 네 절대 마음볼게 좀 줘요 좀 당이야 이거래 내가 가오리면 어떻게 되게 양대 되잖아 같이 죽어 총대 똑지 알라고요. 이 말이 죽어 총배야죠. 주시 받는 분이 샘 대화를 이걸 주면은 맞게 대화지 독이 올 말이 빼라. 이렇게 뭐라고 버렸지네. 들이제 주통신 있는 건데 따라리 그래서 자기 동들이 되고 공부를 책만 못写呢또 사속처럼 마주가 직접 내 주봉 지어서 너무 짜와 사속처럼 더서 내 양쪽에서 탑들이 Romakan, the priori, the Rana, the Gita, the Toata, the Dorinke, they have the Suri Zo, Yin Ketana, so no something with Japari. The name so sound like you, but what you are in going, you are in the son of the Jumichi, but talk to your head. But Mercati, Pina, people that they are the sort of copy for your head. They are now, she ate it.
So, as I mentioned before, I don't have a lot of qualities, and yet I'm invited everywhere. People invite me, they want me to address them, to say a few words, and people prepare so I can do that, so I can do a talk. So, I want to be of benefit of beings, and sometimes what I'm saying, for some it might be beneficial, some think, well, that's something in it for me, and some might think, well, there's maybe not so much in it for me, but still, I have a very deep motivation actually to benefit others. In fact, I think if I would just be invited and I go somewhere and if I cannot be of benefit, it could be actually quite negative for me personally. That's why wherever I go in the world, I always would love, in the end I hand out this small booklet. It's called 37 Practices of the Bodhisattva. It's in fact a practice in essence on how to imply the practice of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is somebody who is single-pointedly motivated to benefit others, to benefit for the welfare of others. And so this small booklet, this 37 Practices of the Bodhisattva, is translated in many different countries, in languages actually. I understand also in Sweden, is that correct? In Swedish actually. So people promote it, it's always handed out obviously for free, and it's also not something, there's nothing missionary thought behind or just to promote something. It's really something which I think, which was for me the most beneficial. When I was in prison, I had nothing. They took us everything, all the texts. I had this, not as a physical, but we had it in our hearts, in our minds. And that's what we practice, and that which was beneficial for myself, like just the essence of this love and loving kindness, which we talked tonight about it. And so I believe strongly that if people can come in contact with this text, the practices of the 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas, it has a deep meaning, and it will be the cause of joy and peace for people, and it's beautiful and wonderful. It can be spread also if people can practice it and integrate it in their own life. We saw before that the essence of the Dharma is one's own mind. If we're striving towards happy states, we have to start with our own mind. It's not enough to just be skilled in the worldly sense, in the worldly tradition. We have to work on our own heart, on our kindness of our heart, and on our own mind. In fact, there's so many teachings, so many categories of instructions of the Dharma which go back to Buddha Shakyamuni. But in real meaning, in essence, if we will bring it all together, of all the 84,000 categories of instructions, it all boils down to compassion, or to bodhicitta, what it's called also, enlightened mind. And this 37 practice of the Bodhisattva is exactly like the means how to practice it, how to practically apply it in our life. That's why I believe it's of so great benefit for us, and also if we can support others with a living example, how we integrate this in our life. Not just now, like uninterrupted. It will be with us till we reach ourselves, finally Buddhahood. So it's the essence of this compassion and this motivation which is single-pointedly directed for the benefit of others. So in the end of this booklet there is an image, maybe some already have it, or maybe hand it out afterwards. It's enlightened female Buddha, Tara. She's called Tara, or Drölma in Tibetan. In Buddhism she's called Tara. In other spiritual tradition the same embodiment is called in different names. We also know this in Christianity. And in essence, what is it? It's just like the universal love of a mother, who is the mother of all beings. This universal, unbiased love. And so it's here also because also in my life it benefited me greatly. I went through, as I just said a few words, through many difficulties in prison ship and concentration camp in Tibet under Chinese government. And in fact I went through so many difficult times that I believe that around 8 times my life was really in threat. That they actively or other circumstances tried to end my life. I mean, for a circumstance, not me myself. And this was always my support, my refuge, like Tara. And always my mind was one pointedly directed, and since her love is so strong, just like this universal mother, this mother who is the mother of all beings, it truly saved me, and I have trust and conviction in that. Sometimes people ask me I'm in a difficult situation, ask Rinpoche, please can you pray for me? And yes, I can do that, but I say more like pray to Tara. Tara is really like this universal protection, this universal love of a mother of all beings. And so it really has this archetypal energy. It's beyond races, beyond different people of colors, of different religions. It transcends all this. It's simply this universal love and compassion.
Hindu chulokadaadi chumo kangaji, de sa chambu pumo, jitilom chumo kangaji saari la peyori. The community, the jitilom juanga kana, tapping with juanga the jitilom juanga chadi chulokashina, juanga the kana tapu, chumo kanga hindu, chumo kanga treated that day. 사천부 부모님 저리 이제 사천부 부모는 문한다. 답을 최시 받았더니 문한 답이 좀 이제 나와서는 중앙 나대 전문가 그래. 그리고 조란 중앙 나차리요. 마다라고 뭔가 상대요. 사하 다와실 때는 막고 돈나 내가 중앙가가 예수가 그 말이야. 그리고 그 만들에 따라 너를 생기 참하게 잡고 그래.
So as I said before, it's really this universal love which penetrates every being, which is there always. For example, in India, in the Hindu context, it is very strong in relation to the river Ganga also, the Ganges. It says like the world, the outer world is comprised of the 5 elements, and Tara relates very much, or as emanations in all these 5 elements of deities, of pure primordial wisdom. And so she relates very much to the river Ganges too, actually. In India, in other names, she's very renowned, and they rely on her. In our context, it's called Maria also. Mary, this universal love of a mother. And in other traditions, they have their other same essence, but other manifestations. In fact, our body is made up of 5 elements in the impure form, and also of the 5 disturbing emotions. And from the context of the Vajrayana, without going into details, it's all seen in a complete pure form. And so Tara relates very much to this, to the elements, actually, the pure form of the elements. And also to Tibet, she has a very special relationship in the past. The Dharma king Songtsen Gampo, who was a manifestation of the Buddha of compassion. And then the queen was actually also directly related to Tara, and for them the Dharma spread in whole Tibet. So there's a very strong connection here also between Tara and Tibet and Avalokiteshvara.